Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of the WrestleWatch podcast, the only podcast where we discuss free agency in the world of professional wrestling. I'm Ryan.
WrestleWatch.
Oh yeah, that's the new theme song, right?
Yeah.
Can you
yeah, just go.
can you go for it?
WrestleWatch. That's how you should do.
That's it.
Yes, that's it.
Okay, let me try. WrestleWatch. Is that good?
That's an A plus.
Finally, I've made it in life.
Yes.
I
I'm Doug, by the way.
Great. Yeah, I do karaoke on it's my local brewery has a karaoke every Friday, the first Friday of every month. And I've been doing Rosalita a lot by Bruce Springsteen, but I might try to do the WrestleWatch theme song from now on.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I think is Rosalita really your karaoke go to?
It's like my classic. It's not my go-to easy song to just throw on and then I'm gonna be able to hit it perfectly. I've been doing a few doing some Billy Joel recently, like his 80s rocker stuff. Do some Pretenders, Brass and Pocket. Did Intergalactic Planetary. Did that one recently.
Do you ever do like the power ballads?
That's not for me. No, because like I have too much of a baritone. So like like for example with David Bowie, a lot of Bowie I can hit, but then like any of its early stuff, any of its ballady like Life on Mars, cannot hit any of that. It's too
I
high.
feel like you always get those people who take it super serious and are always picking something like "It's All Coming Back to Me Now" by Celine Dion, or
Yeah.
"Save the Best for Last."
Yeah,
Or,
I'm not into that mold at all. I'm in the we're having fun and I'm recognizing what the room wants right now mold.
that's fair.
But yeah, yeah, go ahead.
I'm not very. I don't think I'm a very good singer, which I guess is the point. But I don't have a particular. I'm the guy who's gonna sit there and look at the book for like 20 minutes
Mhm.
and not come up with a song.
That was me for a very long time. Yeah.
Yes. All right. So I guess we should probably talk about some WrestleWatch topics.
I guess, but like we could here's a question for you that's wrestling related. If you had to do a wrestler theme song for karaoke, which would you do? One with lyrics, obviously, so you can't pick Bret Hart's theme.
Oh man.
Although that would be fun.
I guess the Final Countdown.
Oh, that would. Oh, that's high. That goes high, but like that gets the room going.
Yeah.
That gets the people going. I'd probably pick Jane.
Jane would work.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're watching along at home right now with us and you're in chat or wherever, you are watching the show, how about you hit us up with what your karaoke song would be for wrestling, and we'll look at what you guys say.
Before we get into it, let's ask one more fun question. Okay, if you were going to take one wrestler who does not have licensed music, and you were going to give him a licensed song, what would it be, and who is it?
That's a good one. I'm going to think on that throughout the show, and then we'll look at the responses from the comments and hit up what our thoughts would be a little bit later.
I'm going to give you one. I'm going to give you mine now, and then you could do yours later. So I would change, and it's controversial because everyone loves her theme song, but I would change Jamie Hayter. I would give her "A Girl Like You" by Edwin Collins.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be mine. So
that's a vibe song.
It is.
Yeah.
I think it suits her well. And I think it'd be it's a good entrance theme, I feel.
So this week on WrestleWatch, we will be talking about a few topics. If you're watching the YouTube live stream right now, you see that this week's episode is called "Here Comes the Money," and I guess that's a karaoke song right there, really. Hey, wasn't that made by WWE, right? That's not a original song outside of the world, right?
I imagine so.
I think that's a Jim Johnston original. But yeah, that's another karaoke possibility. So we're gonna be talking about Shane McMahon and Tony Khan's meeting at some point today, so stay tuned for that. We'll also be talking about a few people like Beth Phoenix, Joe Hendry, Katsuhiko Nakajima, the Lucha Brothers. Von Erichs, and just generally talking about two relationships in the world of professional wrestling for promotions: the WWE TNA relationship, or I guess as WWE might be looking at it, just the NXT and TNA relationship. And also, what we're gonna start off this week with is, well, let's just for people's edification, if you are watching on the stream right now, I put up the tier list from last week, so you guys can look at it as I'd say that what we're gonna first talk about is something that's down in F tier right now from the last week's vote. It's the WWE media, AEW's media rights vis-a-vis possibly leaving Warner Brothers Discovery. Yeah, so last week we had moved it down from D to F tier, but this week we noticed that there were a few reports from higher level people, such as Fightful, that were confirming reports from, I don't want to say lesser outlets, but outlets that we sometimes don't feel as strongly about their accuracy, saying that uh, the window of exclusive negotiating has expired. So that's been confirmed now by higher level outlets that AEW is no longer bound to exclusively negotiate with Warner Brothers Discovery. So that's where we're going to start today. Yeah, go ahead.
So I think this is a very interesting moment because let's taking a larger picture of Warner Brothers Discovery's situation right now. It's very weird because first of all, I don't think it's any secret that since the early 2000s, this is a company that's been hampered with tons and tons of debt.
Mm-hmm.
They had that AOL, the famous Time Warner AOL merger that allegedly killed WCW, but that company is still struggling from that merger because it was a terrible deal, and AOL was incredibly overpriced and overvalued, and they essentially tanked the company. I mean, it's so bad to the point that they're even now having discussions about trying to spin the debt off into a second company,
Yeah,
and then start the company fresh, which I don't know if any regulator is going to allow that, but
I think that will be more likely allowed than the other ideas that they had, like trying to merge with Paramount, who also has a lot of debt on their own plate from their merger where they remerged. That's essentially the playbook that I think that Zaslav is thinking about, is what happened with Viacom, where they split off into two different companies and then remerged later on when one of them had made some profits.
yeah, and that's kind of the point. Is this point is that they just they're dealing with a lot of debt and a lot of external issues outside of you know media rights and professional wrestling. And then the other issue is you take a look at the people that they're fighting for rights with. Let's look at the NBA deal right now, which has now officially gone to ESPN, Amazon, and NBCU. That's still up in the air, and we'll talk about that again in a second. But let's take a look at ESPN. So Disney is the one who owns ESPN. Do you know what Disney's stock price is currently at right now?
I would guess around 120.
It's at 89. It was higher.
It used to be that high. It used to be that high.
Yeah, it did. It was up there. It's been going down a little bit, but still, it's $89. Amazon. Do you know what their stock price is right now?
A ridiculous amount of money because of how they have never split the stock.
Yeah. Well, it crashed like 8% the other day, but it's still $167.
Yeah.
Okay. Now NBCU, who has
Comcast.
Yeah, Comcast. They have WWE rights and all that. They're at $39.
Yeah.
Do you want to take a guess what Warner Brothers Discovery stock is at?
I think it's 6 or something around there.
It's 8. Very good guess.
You're very close. I was actually not up on them as much as reality.
Yes, so you're pretty close. So either way, this is and granted, this isn't necessarily talking about their total market value necessarily, and it's not apples to oranges comparison in terms of how many. But it does show you it does still give an idea of like, okay, these companies or not the same. Warner Brothers Discovery is not, in that same realm. It's not in the same area. And when you look at the negotiations that they're doing right now, and if you're AEW, does it make sense to maybe say, you know what? Maybe it's not a bad idea to just kind of let this time frame expire and see if we could talk to these other people instead, and maybe get on a track that maybe is a little bit more financially secure.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. And if we're being honest here, I think that AEW is still in the driver's seat with this. I think that they have a 5-year track record proving that they are a commodity that does really well on, social media engagement. They have a pretty strong fan base.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there's a lot of other companies that would probably want to at least kick the tires on AEW.
Yeah.
Do stay with Warner Brothers Discovery, it does make sense to kind of leverage these other companies against each other to try to get the best deal.
Yeah, and as somebody in our comments pointed out, one of our committee members, hey, Warner Brothers Discovery is obviously the place to be because they're on the rise. Look at the last month; they're up 14.7% in their stock. Never mind that that's like based off of them hitting their all-time low of $7 a share, and that they're down 30% over the year. But they're up in the month, baby. It's a bounce back.
Right? Yeah.
Buy, as Trevor Lee would say.
They're swinging the low and they're going to attack the high.
Yeah, so I generally agree with you about that. It seems that the direction you don't want to be. So I know that a lot of people have been pointing out things about all of the integration strategies that they're trying to do with Warner Brothers Discovery and AEW recently. And it's kind of interesting that they're all being kind of backloaded at the end of their contract with Warner Brothers Discovery. But things about like Comic-Con and all those kinds of things that just happened in the last week with DC and Adult Swim. The thing is that we don't know where those properties are going to be if Warner Brothers decides to split itself in half. We don't know. I would presume that Adult Swim would go with the TV half with all of the debt, and I would presume that DC would go with the film studio so that they don't have any issues with the rights to DC if they own it, outright. So it's like, okay, cool. So you've ramped up integration in the last year possible, in the last 6 months possible, with a company that might not exist as it currently is in 6 months even. It just doesn't make you feel confident in what's going on. And although it is interesting to point out that Collision was taped this week for the episode that aired last night at time shifted at 5 p.m. It was filmed on Thursday. Some people were pointing out that that was only because of SummerSlam. They didn't want to do a live show at the same time as SummerSlam, blah, blah, blah. I think it was because Tony wanted to fly to the Olympics and have an entire week in Paris.
And both are probably accurate.
Yeah, so it was confirmed by a number of outlets again that I should phrase it. Fightful reported that both Warner Brothers and Tony Khan both confirmed that they will be meeting in Paris during the Olympics. So that again, it was reinforcing again that they have, in theory, a deal, but they haven't signed a deal, which means that now, exactly as you said, Tony Khan is in the driver's seat with all of this. If he wants to try a different company, as we've said before, we're looking at companies that have had interest in wrestling recently, that have thrown their weight around in other negotiations for media rights for sports in general. Sports, live entertainment is kind of one way of looking at it as well, because like that's the big money thing right now in linear television is you need to have live entertainment. If you don't have live entertainment, then that's what's sucking your ratings down, because people are like, oh, I'll just watch it on DVR or on Hulu later,
Mm-hmm.
But people don't want to watch sports late. People want to watch sports live, and if they don't watch them live, they don't want to watch the game. Like no, like barely any people. Like for example, last night the Orioles and the Guardians played, and it was like a fun game where like the Guardians were ahead early, and then the Orioles came back with 7 runs and hit 15 hits, and it was a big fun game. But like, if I didn't watch any part of that game live, I would have no interest in watching it, knowing what the result is. And that's the secret of sports on linear television is that's people feel the need to watch it live, whereas with like linear television TV shows, people don't feel the need for speed, the need to watch it live. So that's where wrestling comes in with that, and that's why Amazon and Disney both were looking at trying to get Raw's rights, and ultimately Netflix, another company that does most of their business in the sphere of you don't need to watch it live, but you could binge it in a big bulk right now. They were like, hey, you know what would be great is we get this live program in Raw, and we can get the rights to all of this binge content. And they got, I mean, Netflix got a good deal out of it, I think. I don't know. I would say necessarily that WWE. I think retrospectively we're gonna look back on it and say like WWE undervalued themselves in the deal, but
especially if TV rights keep going up.
Yeah, because like it's giving all the power to Netflix also with how the options work in that. But it means that Tony Khan probably should be looking at this and in the same case of like, hey, well, if the rights to Raw in the back catalog got X amount over there, and if you look, like you run the numbers through based off of ratings and previous deals and blah 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 and everything, you're like, wow, Disney and Amazon have enough money in their bag to give us a big upgrade from what Warner Brothers is doing, and they were both more stable companies. So,
and
that's my take.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and we talked about this ramping up already that we saw with the integration between Warner Brothers and AEW, and I think that a lot of that is probably coming from the Warner Brothers Discovery side in order to try to woo them into staying.
Yeah.
And here's the thing: if I had to guess right now, I'd still say they're most likely staying.
Yeah, and I just want to point out something that one of our committee members said in the comments here, that they cannot imagine the collaborations between the separate entities. Which, if and when Warner Brothers splits, it will be too difficult, and that's a good point as well because the stocks, the voting stocks, will still be held by whatever the current ownership is of the companies, most likely when they spin off. So, in the short term, they'll be separate companies, so they'll have their own individual fiduciary interests, of course, but they will be owned by the same people, so in theory they will try to work with each other pretty easily because they're the same people.
Yeah. And I do say, I will say this, I think it's most likely they're staying with WBD. However, I could very, very easily see like Disney coming in and wanting to put Dynamite on FX.
Yeah. I mean, like that was the big thing was like when we were running the numbers of looking at the range that was likely going to be offered, like we kind of felt like the absolute floor that Warner Brothers was going to be offering was 125, going up to like 175. On the higher end there, it was less likely that Warner Brothers would be looking at that amount of money, but that a company like Disney would definitely be able to pay for that, considering that they were trying to get SmackDown for far more than that. Oh, excuse me, Raw far more than that for FX. So, yeah, I think that if they don't do an agreement, if they don't sign on the dotted line this weekend in Paris, like that says something to me. Like he's basically getting wine and dined with like because Eurosport, which is owned by Warner Brothers Discovery, is the broadcaster of the Olympics this year because they have the media rights for France. So all of the feeds and everything that you're seeing are being produced by Warner Brothers Discovery this year, and then being localized by whatever your country's broadcaster is. So So yeah, so Warner Brothers is like doing a lot of work this weekend, so it's a great, way to show off to Tony of like, hey, see, like we have all these resources throughout the entire world. We could do this for you. That kind of thing.
Absolutely. But and then I'm thinking, I mean, go back to Disney because within the last year, I think it might have been, yeah, it was last year. Within last year, they've now taken over complete ownership of Hulu.
Yes, the
So no,
Hulus.
it's no longer part of NBCU. So they need to get more content for Hulu. They obviously we said FX, but they have a lot more content they need to fill than Warner Brothers Discovery does at this point. And they have a lot more money to do it.
Yeah, they have a lot more money to do it, and then Amazon also could pad out their live package, with it because they'll have NBA. It's so weird how they have it set up with the NFL stuff, but like they'll have NFL for a quarter of the year, they'll have NBA for half the year, and then they have this dead period of summer where they could be looking to get some live content, as they're probably phrasing it internally.
Yeah. Oh, and not to mention with ESPN Plus,
Yeah,
they
which
already
is
do their pay-per-views that they already do pay-per-views the same way UFC does. So
yeah,
it'd be very easy to kind of just throw that onto ESPN Plus and do it the same way.
yeah.
And because that was the big thing with WWE is that they devalued their pay-per-views, so you can't put the toothpaste back in the tube after you
Well,
make them $9.99.
that's something that this might be a transitionary point for us. I think if I ordered all of these things correctly. So first off, let's just recap there. We did vote on this. Where do you think that we should be putting the media rights negotiations for AEW? What tier would you put it at right now?
It was at F tier, and I think it should go up to like either C or D.
Yeah, I voted C, which I think is a little bit bolder than most people. I really am bullish on this just because although I'm saying it's 50-50 and I'm feeling bullish, but I think relatively speaking to a lot of people, I'm feeling bullish on it because they've not signed anything. And Tony is having to get essentially wine and dined at Paris by Warner Brothers. Which that says to me like Warner Brothers really wants to get this, deal figured out. But yeah, so it looks like if we check with our committee, yeah, okay, I'm getting word. Our committee is gonna put them in D tier, which is where they were last week.
Yeah.
So we flip flopped. Um, that's the way
I
the
think
cookie crumbles.
I think that's fine. And I think, and obviously we touched on it briefly, but I feels like still nothing is going to happen until they sort out this NBA situation, which is
Yeah,
another reason why, if AEW doesn't want to sit around and wait for that to get sorted out, I could see them leaving.
yeah. So that's that part. And what the thing that was piquing my ears when you said devaluing with regards to WWE with how they have like all the pay-per-views essentially for free for people or $10 depending on how you have your cable set up. It's that supposedly in the press conference last night, SummerSlam, it seems that SummerSlam is going to become a 2-night pay-per-view in the future, which I guess we're on the road to 4 nights, buy one get one free WrestleMania.
Yeah. They should just double everything. Just do 4 nights of WrestleMania.
Yeah,
Let's just see how far we can go with this. Make it like the Olympics, where it's just like a a 2 week long event.
it's just to me, I feel like when I was watching some because you did not watch SummerSlam last night, correct?
I did not.
Um, it felt like to me that it felt like a devalued WrestleMania. Like they have it in this big football stadium and they couldn't sell it out. It like they announced the attendance as like 50 something thousand, but they had like half or a third of the stadium was all covered, like the tarped. They had to keep on stopping of like showing all like they had this weird thing where they had a ref cam, like they put they attached the camera to the ref's in-ear microphone. It's like a little comm in his ear. They attached a camera to it, and the camera's quality was like, you remember the ring post cameras that AEW used to have?
Yeah.
And those little weird webcams? It was the same quality of image.
The ones that keep getting broken.
Yes, and like they would cut to it. I think they cut to it like maybe twice the entire night because like the quality was so bad.
Well, I'm looking at the cage match ratings right now for the show, and
it's pretty mid.
I'll be honest, I thought I heard a lot more positive stuff on social media while this show was going on because I was out of the house. But I'm looking at, and cage matches usually pretty favorable to WWE.
Yes.
And these are pretty low ratings.
Yeah, for relatively speaking, yeah. While the show was going on, Dave Meltzer was like apoplectic of what he was watching because they kept doing the same spot in every single match where like they do like the whole like Toro, and then you run out of the way and the guy spears himself into the ring post. They did that spot in every single match except for one match on the card, and then every match except for one ended with interference. So yeah, so what I was my point was that the pay-per-view felt like they were doing a WrestleMania card, but not as big of a feeling, and some of the matches just felt like copy and paste from WrestleMania. Like they had Cody versus Solo Sikoa, which was just like a redux of Cody versus Roman. So like I'm worried for WWE that they're going to devalue the brand of WrestleMania by trying to pump up SummerSlam into being the same exact thing, but 6 months later. So, but that's a worry for them, and I'm not them, so you know.
Yeah, that's and here's the thing: I've accepted that they're doing very, very well at making their audience happy. I mean, this is very, very clearly, their audience really likes what they're doing and thinks that this is great. And they should not stop doing that because why would you? I mean, if your audience is happy, you should keep this going. And I know that sounds like condescending. I'm not trying to make it sound condescending. I'm just saying that, this isn't necessarily what I look for in a wrestling show, but it shouldn't, I shouldn't like every type of wrestling. There's a lot of different wrestling promotions I just don't like. Yeah. But I acknowledge that they are popular and it's working for their audience and their fan base. And I think they're successful and they should keep doing it. And WWE is a perfect example. I think that they've touched on something. They have an identity now and a direction and I think that they should keep that up. It's just that it's not going to be something I'm going to necessarily like. I just don't like this production. I don't like the way they're doing this personally. It's not something I'm going to spend my time watching. I find it a little boring.
Yeah, that was my feeling during the pay-per-view. Was I was just the matches weren't bad; they were just boring.
Yeah, I usually don't watch WWE pay-per-views live, but I'll usually put them on the next day.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to do this one.
I would say you should watch the Gunther Damian Priest match, which I do ratings of matches on the side. I've rated I don't know, over 600 matches at least this year. I'm on 600 so far this year. I do it out of a real 5-star scale, not a 12-point scale like Dave does. But it does, as a percentage, it equals out to his stars pretty much match up with mine, on a scale for a rating system. But anyway, there was not a match that I would have given over 3 stars even, except for Gunther Priest. So I would highly recommend that match.
Okay.
Yeah, other than the finish of that match, I thought everything else about that match, you would watch it and be like, oh, yeah, this is good wrestling. There's no weird long rest periods. There's no in the middle of the match promos. There's no like long interference spots. It's just an actual wrestling match, which is and it was good too. Like it wasn't just that it was like a wrestling match, and so I was like, oh my god, I love wrestling. It was like, no, this is a good wrestling match. So I would say go out of your way to watch that one.
Okay. Well, and I think that's all for WBD and AEW. I know
yes, yeah.
I don't know how we got into that, but that's fine. That's fine. Hey, we did.
Yeah. So, speaking of last night with the SummerSlam, there has been some updates this week about the relationship with TNA for WWE, which is something that we are tracking on the tier list. This past week we had it before we had it in C tier, and it also was related to one Joe Hendry. So first off, earlier in the week, Joe Hendry was on a podcast called The Wrestling Mat, and he was talking about his agreements that are going on about how he is being used in WWE and in TNA. He said squarely that he is a contracted TNA talent. He has only a contract with TNA, but while he's working at NXT, he got an agreement from TNA that is allowing him to work in the performance center and train. It looks like that he really wanted to do it. Shawn Michaels really wanted him to do it, so they worked something out with TNA that allowed him to have a little bit more freedom to be working in WWE than pretty much. It sounds like it's a unique thing. From the way it's phrased by Joe. If you want more information, go check out the Wrestling Mat. But then also at the the media scrum or the press conference, whatever they call it in WWE, after SummerSlam, Triple H was asked about the TNA relationship, and he said like, yeah, they called it a partnership with NXT. I think that you had some more thoughts on that, didn't you, Doug?
Yeah. So I think at this point, it's very clear to me that there is definitely a partnership in some regard between NXT and TNA. I think that Triple H more or less confirmed that. I think, especially, and I think it's interesting because he made some points in the press conference. I did watch parts of the press conference, and I did see where Triple H was talking about the TNA relationship, and he mentioned a couple things I thought was interesting. Where he said the the business has kind of shifted where people aren't wrestling every single day. So even he is acknowledging that WWE's schedule is historically been too much, and they're going to be pulling back. Which this is just the nature of the business was going to that was going to happen because these house shows are not profitable, and I think that with AEW existing and offering people, these lighter schedules for more money, not everyone is going to buy into the grind. And I think that WWE is finally acknowledging that. I think that was a sign of that. Having said that, they do acknowledge that, a lot of people still do need reps.
Yeah.
And I think that TNA might end up being that feeder promotion where they could pull people up from TNA to NXT, or they could send people to TNA if they want them to get off TV and make people forget about them for a while, but they could still like kind of train and do reps. I could see them going the other way, but it does seem like it's definitely going to be an exclusively TNA thing, and WWE main roster is not going to be doing Forbidden Door matches and things like that with other promotions. That seems to be how I see it, which makes sense to me in a sense because NXT was always kind of positioned as the as a competitor to AEW.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
Like they were trying, like when AEW first launched, they tried to make NXT this like super indie promotion to compete with AEW because that's what they thought AEW was going to be.
Yeah.
Which to me, and it failed, because the same reason why. Okay, let me say this. Let me frame this in a certain way. NXT was trying to be AEW in order to make people not watch AEW, and that was going to fail because because AEW is going to do a better job of being kind of like the indie darling promotion that was based on work rate. It was just going to AEW is just going to be better at that because NXT is not what NXT is. In the same way that last year around this time, AEW was getting a lot of criticism because they were trying to be more and more like WWE with a lot more, sports entertainment angles and things like that. And people were criticizing them because, once again, you're just never going to be as good as WWE at that style, and people are going to watch WWE instead. And then that failed. So it really shows this idea you want to stick with, uh, what your identity is. And even saying that, NXT has always kind of had this different identity from main roster WWE. It always has, for better or worse. And I think that one of the things they're trying to do now is they're trying to get some of that buzz and pop that AEW has gotten by having all these partnerships with CMLL and New Japan and, DDT and Tokyo Joshi Pro and Stardom. And they're trying to get it a little bit, but they're not putting it so much into their main roster show. Because let's be honest, I don't know if the WWE fan, the I don't want to say the casual fan, but just the run of the mill WWE fan is necessarily going to be all that into cross promotion stuff. That may be too much for them. That may be a little overwhelming for them. But I think you're an NXT fan. If you're an NXT watcher, you're to borrow a term, you're a little bit of a sicko if you're watching NXT.
Relatively speaking, in the WWE.
Relatively speaking. So, and then you'd be a little bit more into the idea of watching, some different things. Because let's be honest, there's nobody who's really watching NXT and not watching WWE.
Well, so that's kind of like the identity of NXT feels separate still from quote unquote main roster WWE.
Yes.
Over time, even whenever they do a draft for the main roster shows for SmackDown and Raw, it feels like, I don't know, maybe this is me as somebody that doesn't watch every single week the weekly TV shows, but it feels like that there is some wiggle room about where somebody appears, except for the top champions. It'll be like, oh yeah, well, we need a tag team over here to do something. Can we pull some of these guys over from SmackDown? Yeah, sure, we can do that. Over time, it starts to, at the beginning of every year when they have a draft, it's all perfect and separated. Then over time, they just kind of mesh into one roster. Whereas NXT doesn't ever melt into that pot. NXT is a separate little thing. So it means that as you're watching NXT, it has its own distinct identity, even if you don't necessarily like what that identity is right now, or if it's your favorite thing, it doesn't matter. It has its own distinct identity within the WWE ecosystem. So yeah, I think more likely with somebody that does follow NXT, even if the style of NXT is not something that you would necessarily see in other promotions, I think that if you have someone, at least this is what the theory is probably that TNA is thinking about when they're looking at all of this, is, well, if somebody, is an NXT fan and we put somebody from NXT on our show, it will pop a rating, right? And, well, it hasn't really done that yet. Because that might just be what you were saying, the average WWE fan is not someone to go searching for wrestling outside of WWE. That's just the way that essentially over the decades WWE has conditioned people into feeling that way, to not go seek wrestling outside WWE because WWE is wrestling. Yeah.
And TNA's been doing some good houses lately. They've been selling tickets.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have been pointing to that. But I think that people are missing the point that, they were doing pretty well before this whole partnership happened. I mean,
well, yeah. And I would also point out that the show that they did in outside of Montreal, it's there was I don't think that there was anybody from NXT that was announced before the tickets went on sale. I think that the Rascals and all that was after tickets went on sale, and they had already dropped the tickets to being like $13. So it's like it's hard to say that it was because of NXT in that case.
Right. Like when Naomi was in the company, like, and that was long before this partnership happened. They were popping some houses and doing well. They had Osprey and Speedball Mike Bailey in Chicago, and that show sold out, and you couldn't get in the building if you wanted to. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's like I don't know that we're necessarily seeing a big spike over what they're typically doing.
Yeah.
And also in the chat, Jonesy said TNA is Evolve now. I think that's a perfect example. Late stage Evolve. Late stage Evolve. I mean, not like Zack Sabre Jr. champion Evolve or Timothy Thatcher's era where a lot of people weren't really too into that.
Well, that's like the thing is like what you were kind of pointing out there was that even last year they were popping some big numbers of their houses because they were bringing in big names that are in the sphere that a non WWE fan like the way that wrestling could be looked at is like you have your wrestling fans and your sports entertainment fans, okay, or like your WWE ecosystem fans and your outside of WWE fans, right? And the non WWE fans knew who Will Ospreay was, and Will Ospreay had appeared in TNA before. So when Will Ospreay versus Speedball Mike Bailey gets announced, people go to that show, right? I'm not sure if there's. I'm not 100% sure if there's anybody in NXT that will pop that. Like, maybe Roxanne Perez? Maybe. But I don't think that. Well, first off, it's like their current champion, Ethan Page. Well, he was in TNA like 3 or 4 years ago. So it's not like people are like, "Oh wow, gotta go and see Ethan Page. It's a once in a lifetime match." It's like, no, we've seen these matches before. So I don't think that it's gonna pop the opposite way, unless that it was main roster talent coming over to TNA, which is the quality of somebody like Will Ospreay or Kenny Omega.
And I think that kind of lends into Joe Hendry specifically, because I think it's very clear that this guy, he's the next LA Knight. I really firmly believe that. He's super over. He's got a really, really popular gimmick. And let's be honest, he's a creative guy. He always has been. And I think it translates incredibly well to WWE. I think it's more or less a formality at this point. Maybe this TNA just doesn't want to let him out of his contract because he's so good, and they want to keep him around as long as they can. And they're doing this thing where he is now going to be training at the Performance Center as almost just a bridge to where he's eventually going to go. And they're just letting him do both while he's still under contract.
Yeah.
And hopefully, like, by the time his contract is up, NXT's hoping, hey, you'll be good to go right out the gate because you've been training with us and learning our style.
Yeah, I think that they're long-term invested in Joe Hendry. I think that and especially because, like, so far, again, it does not seem like there's been any other TNA talent that have been, number one, afforded this much screen time in NXT, but number two, been afforded this, like, backstage, like, treatment. So, like, Joe Hendry has been treated. Also, when you look at ratings for NXT, it doesn't necessarily show in the actual live ratings that Joe Hendry is popping, but like when you look at the YouTube videos, he is like doing 3 times the viewership of anything else on NXT. People are watching or being kept up about NXT because of Joe Hendry. So I think that WWE sees that and they're like, oh, we've hit gold here. Oh crap, his contract with somebody else. So yeah, it's possible that maybe they just buy TNA. But yeah, like I think that could be one of the end games here if we're trying to game out end games, and we might write about this in our Substack for this week as like a little bit of a long form thing. Is what is the end game for TNA with this relationship with WWE. I think that one of the possible end games is they just get bought by WWE. And as we were talking before about the Evolve kind of thing, or I think you might have mentioned, or somebody might have mentioned that, hey, it's like kind of officializing. Is this like their is this NXT US essentially? I mean, it's like a sub brand of NXT because they're sending some of their talent there just to get reps. So yeah,
yeah, and we'll see. I think ultimately what's going to happen with this is it's going to either become more and more of an established thing, or it might just. I mean, I guess I don't really know where it's going to go, but I think it's either going to they'll be brought under the umbrella completely of WWE. Maybe WWE buys TNA. You know, they probably wouldn't hate having that library.
yeah,
Or it just continues as it is. I don't
yeah.
know that. I I don't know that we're going to see a whole lot more than that. Like I'm not seeing TNA versus WWE main roster anytime soon.
Well,
I think
yeah.
I feel confident about that.
Yeah. I think that something that some in our comments here, Jonesy on our committee says I also insist TNA is a Canadian promotion, so it will be NXT Canada. Uh, well, and this is something that I was pointing out previously was that with NXT moving to CW, that it seems this year that they've kind of started to move NXT away from just being Performance Center graduates and NIL people and bringing in some more experienced indie types into it, like Ethan Page. So I think it's possible that they could be trying to kind of do a little bit more of that Schrodinger's developmental, as the term is, with them when they go to CW. And then in that case happens, then yeah, TNA could fill in the role of an NXT Canada, essentially, being like the sub brand.
I do want to see if CMLL, I'm not CML, if the CW, how that works out, because that's my big question mark. Like I assume that Raw on Netflix is going to work out. Like I could see that being popular. I could see that being because it is new, like in the sense of we're having like live streaming weekly programming on Netflix. We never had that.
Yeah.
At least not consistently, and but I'm pretty confident that'll work out. WWE programming on CW and what CW is going to look like and how is it actually going to pop CW's ratings, because it's a very, very weak channel. I have no idea, and I'm very curious to see what happens with that.
So somebody in our live chat on YouTube, which thank you for everybody that's watching on YouTube right now, said that Joe Hendry is the Deadpool of pro wrestling.
I suppose.
He's feeling very memey.
Yes.
Yeah. Which I guess gets to the LA Knight kind of comparison there.
Yeah, I think that's a solid comparison, and it's why I think that he would probably work is that once you get into that, because it's definitely more of a tongue-in-cheek thing, which is why I think that a lot of people he kind of the same reason LA Knight kind of rubs people the wrong way, and we're in the sense of like, okay, this is wrestling for fans who are not really super into wrestling.
Yeah. So where would you put Joe Hendry on the tier list?
I think he should be higher. I mean, I know he's not on the list yet, but I kind of go on the higher end. I'm almost thinking like, I think he's gone more likely than not. I went B tier.
I went B tier also because I think more likely than not he gone in the next year. Some people were unsure about where to put him because there were some people that were like, well, he already essentially has a deal with WWE. It's like, well, no, he doesn't. he clearly says that he is contracted to TNA, so he does not have a deal with WWE. And if he does, then that just puts him in S tier, like the Hikuleo, where we know that Hikuleo is signed to WWE, but he's not debuted with WWE. There were some people that were like, "Well, we don't know when his contract's going to be up," but I think that that doesn't matter anymore with TNA talent.
Especially when you know like you know where they're going, and you know
Yeah,
that it's like they're waiting on it. It doesn't really matter at
yeah,
that point. It's like you kind of like that's okay. If it's someone who I like, a Ricky Starks is a perfect example. Someone I don't really know when his deal is up, but I have a pretty strong feeling that he's going to leave. That's one thing. But it's like when it's a situation where they're already like kind of setting the stage for it
yeah.
and already like doing things where they're letting them go to the performance center. I mean, I feel like that's a different level.
Yeah, it's kind of like it makes me think about the writing was kind of on the wall with like Will Ospreay even 2 years ago, where he
Yeah.
was like doing these extended runs in AEW. He was getting featured so prominently for All In. It was kind of like, yeah, this guy's gonna jump to AEW when his contract's up. Like it was pretty obvious that that was what was gonna happen.
Yeah.
Some people have been starting to chat about Mina Shirakawa in a certain way with that as well. Because she's even today she came out and said that she was going to spread X Nexus Venus to the rest of the world and come to America. She said that like today. Um, so I think that that's another one where it's like, well, Stardom contracts their cycle is still another like 8 months out or maybe something like that is how long their cycle is. So it's not really something that's like immediately on the horizon, but it's like if she's saying that, then she's probably on her way to AEW at some point in the next
Right.
year.
And
Like,
but they also have the issue where like okay, it's different. This is where AEW's partnerships are different from WWE's partnerships, where WWE is, you know, the big brother to the little brother that is TNA,
mhm,
and that they could just kind of take whoever they want, and TNA is just happy to have the relationship. AEW at least attempts to try to treat them all as equals,
yeah,
and I don't think that AEW necessarily wants to be, and I know it's a delicate balancing act. They don't want to be in the position where they're just poaching talent from their partners.
yeah,
And I think that obviously they've taken some, but I think it's also been situations where it's like if they don't go to AEW, they're going to go to WWE, and you're never going to use them ever.
yeah. That's the whole in the family dynamic that came up during Stephanie Vecchor's negotiations, her bidding war, where
Yes.
it seemed that like CMLL and New Japan were given information about how it was going, the negotiations were going for CMLL side, and we're kind of like, hey, AEW, can you like get her?
Yeah. Which
uh,
I which makes sense.
yeah,
But yeah, so
yeah.
but that just shows the difference between the companies for
Yeah,
sure.
and Jonesy in the chat from our committee was asking if NXT TNA is already confirmed now, which Jonesy believes it is. Then they're already in the system. I think this is talking about Joe Hendry, but that really isn't real until a purchase. So like, yeah, my opinion is if we're looking at talent from TNA jumping to WWE, it's still a jump if it's a partnership. Like we would look at somebody leaving New Japan or CMLL to AEW as a jump, even though they're partners.
Yeah.
Um,
And
but
and we'll
but but if Tony Khan bought New Japan, then yeah, I would not see that as a jump.
yeah, and we'll talk maybe we'll talk about these guys like another week
Yeah.
because there's not a whole lot of info on them yet, but obviously there was the talk that Matt and Jeff Hardy are talking with WWE now.
Yes. Yeah. Which
So
yeah, I think that that'll come up next week.
yeah, that we need more info on that, I think, before we delve into that.
So to recap, though, the way that our committee has gone with this for Joe Hendry is putting him in F tier at the moment, which I understand. I think that he should be higher, but I understand it because of the lack of information about his contract status,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess the possibility that hey, maybe somebody gets bought soon. Uh,
Yeah,
so
so I think we got a couple quick hitters to go through next, right?
yes, we got a quick hits. We got Beth Phoenix, who her contract with WWE expired just recently. Of course, Beth Phoenix is the wife of one Adam Copeland, who is currently out with an injury that he sustained at Double or Nothing this year. How are you feeling about the possibility of Beth Phoenix, I'm presuming, going to AEW?
I think it's obviously possible.
Yeah.
I think I can see either way. I mean, I think if she wants to go, I think she'll probably go. Based off of this, I could see it. I mean, she's already doing his theme song. So
She's already appeared, I guess. Yeah.
so I could see going either, C or D for her.
Oh,
Absolutely.
yeah. That reminds me. One of the answers that we got was about the karaoke is Metalingus.
I couldn't do that.
No, no.
I don't think that's not a. I don't think that's a type of karaoke. I need a lot more energy. I'm more of a. I don't think I could do that. No,
Okay.
I don't have the confidence to do that.
I think if it didn't have the baggage, that Real American would work as a karaoke song.
Oh
Maybe,
Lord.
depending on the county, that would work really well.
Yeah, that's true.
So Beth Phoenix, what tier would you place Beth Phoenix in then?
I think I said like D or C.
I would go D for the moment because I think that I want to hear a little bit more about this. I think that there's smoke here, uh, but I'm not sure if there's fire. She's of course come backstage to AEW shows before, but like, hey, it's her husband's there, so like it makes sense, you know. Hashtag
Yes.
makes sense. Flat Earth and all that. Thanks, AJ. Uncle Al. So the committee has decided D tier is an appropriate place for her at the moment, and I agree. So that's good. Next up, Katsuhiko Nakajima. This is a saga, but it'll be a quick hit. I think it's a quick hit
Yeah.
saga. So he's been appearing with GLEAT recently in Japan. He's worked his way down the promotion ladder in Japan. No offense to GLEAT, but
Hey, we are GLEAT respecters on the show.
yes, respect the GLEAT. But he has gone from it seemed that when he went to All Japan originally, his thought process was that it would allow for him to have a little bit of a pit stop before eventually going to New Japan. And then what happened was New Japan didn't want him. And then All Japan didn't want him anymore, so he left All Japan and he went to GLEAT. And now GLEAT wants to do a co-promoted match between him and somebody from All Japan, and All Japan said no. So
Yeah.
if he can't even get into All Japan, which isn't on our tier list either for reference, but it is a respectable promotion. If you can't even get into All Japan, then like it's kind of starting to feel like maybe he's not going anywhere of note.
Yeah. The only thing I will say is that that doesn't necessarily mean he won't go to WWE. It doesn't necessarily mean he won't go to AEW, which are, or even TNA, which are big promotions on our tier list. Those are the ones that we kind of
recognized
yeah.
promotion.
So he could still go there. That's not an impossibility. So I'll point that out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, listen, it's pretty well known that this is a guy who's had some attitude issues, I think, to say the least.
Yes, yeah. He's been supposedly he's difficult to work with.
Yes, and obviously he's had issues knocking people out, shootly, and
sounds like CM Punk. Maybe it would work in WWE then.
Yes. So I think yeah, I think I'm keeping him at D or even moving him down to F.
Yeah, I was feeling either F or just getting rid of him because like here's my feeling about it is that in my heart I feel like actually no, in my head feel like he should not be on the tier list anymore. Like I have so low confidence of him jumping anywhere that we recognize at this point. But in my heart I want to keep watching because this is a WrestleWatch and I want to keep looking to see if he does end up somewhere. So I voted F, and it seems that our committee agrees that they want to see how this goes because we're keeping him on the tier list, but he's dropping down to F tier.
That's fair.
And last in these quick hits is the Von Erichs. The news with them is that they've been appearing in the Arlington residency for AEW and ROH to the point where they won the vacant ROH six-man tag championships with Dustin Rhodes as their partner, which, again, it's kind of weird that I don't like that they reactivated the six-man belts, but if they're going to do it, this feels like the best thing for them to have done is to use it for this residency with the hometown baby faces, you know? So, um, I'm not sure if it's going to be a long-term thing. So that's tempering where I want to put them on the tier list. But this is definitely a step in the direction of possibly they're going to get long-term signed to Ring of Honor. How are you feeling about it, Doug?
Yeah, I feel like if you put the belts on them, that's a pretty strong sign. I think I went B tier.
Yeah,
I think I went a little higher on this.
that's how I was going on it. Yeah, they
And
were
and
in C tier previously. Yeah.
yeah, and I will say this. I do think I get what they're doing with Ring of Honor now. They're trying to do something with it. You have Sammy Guevara there now, just returning and things like that. So I think they're trying to do something with it, not necessarily because they think Ring of Honor is great or anything like that, or has like great potential, but they're trying to make it more valuable as they are entering these new media rights windows. So I understand what they're trying to do,
Yeah.
and I you know do I like I said, is it possible that the Von Erichs aren't signed? Yes, I think it's very possible that the Von Erichs aren't signed. But at this point, I think it's more likely they have some type of deal,
Yeah.
um, or about to get some type of deal. So I think B tier is appropriate.
Yeah, my feeling on it is that it's possible that this is like the first step of something that I'm going to be writing a piece about on our Substack coming up here. Is about the residency model for Ring of Honor and possibly for Collision. Now that I've watched now that there's been a few episodes of Collision being this residency model, I've kind of come around to the feeling of like this might work like as this is like going and doing a month long like finding a venue in major cities and doing a weekly Saturday night residency for Collision for a month, and then on the back end having Ring of Honor filmed also, in the gaps there, because it's more fun and exciting, especially for the hometown fans, to see the hometown baby faces compete on Ring of Honor. It's giving them a reason to come out. It's giving them a reason to get pumped up. You're seeing it with Hologram also, where on Collision, where he's actually getting this like groundswell of support, and it's helping build him up for if and when they have him touring with AEW, that fans at home will know who he is. So when they go to like the Toledo Collision show next month, they'll be able to be like, "Oh, hey, it's Hologram. We're finally getting to see him live. Oh, this is great. This is fun." So I think that that's it's an interesting thing, and so the little piece of that though is that then creates a little bit of doubt in my mind on if the Von Erichs are going to be long-term stays in Ring of Honor, or if this is just a thing just to get a little hometown pop. And we have somebody in the comments saying, "What's up? What's up?" Right back to you. Hologram is awesome. He definitely is awesome. And I don't know if you watched last night, but he had a nice little tag match with Mystico, which is a nice rub for him, I would say.
Yeah, and here's the other thing I'll say about this residency. First of all, if you saw, I don't know if you saw, but Cleveland apparently struck some deal
Yes, with
with
AEW.
AEW.
Yes, the
So
$1.5 million for filming in Cleveland.
yeah, so maybe this is going to be another residency situation.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. That was where my mind went as well with that. And I think that if they can find venues like that, or like we've mentioned before, the ECW Arena in Philadelphia would be perfect for it as well. Finding venues of that kind of quality or that kind of capacity throughout the country. I think that if you are able to tie it in with Collision, it allows you to do what in theory, they're doing in Ohio, which is get the television grant money to film it, which helps offset the costs for filming the Ring of Honor, which might not get the television grants because it's not technically televised. It is, but it's not, depending on how the laws are set up in certain states. Obviously, TNT is television, so they'll be able to use that to then, supplement the possible funding needed to do ROH for these residencies. So, yeah, that's my feel on it. I think that we put the Von Erichs up to B tier. Yep, we did. We did. The committee wanted to move them up just one space up to B tier.
I think that's fair.
And the final piece that we have here. Oh yeah, and I just wanted to mention Jonesy here from our committee. Thank you for watching today. Is saying was bearish on the Von Erichs because they think that they won't make the decision until the residency ends, which I agree. I think that the decision about the Von Erichs won't come until the residency is over as well.
Yeah, we'll see what happens there, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and Mario on the YouTube comment says, yeah, that Cleveland Grant is a good pickup for AEW. I agree. Hopefully, it's something that, WWE has learned how to do over the years very well to get these kinds of production grants. So it's nice to see AEW starting to apply for those as well. It only helps the health of the wrestling industry if more than one company is doing it. It helps make sure that states and local boards are aware that it's not just WWE, and also other promotions, maybe TNA, maybe like a GCW or something like that, could look at that as a way to get some money to help fund their shows. Next up, we're going to talk about the Lucha Brothers. They've had a saga this weekend as well, where they competed in CMLL, which might be the big thing that Penta was trying to plan for, potentially. He had been talking about trying to be on the good side of CMLL in the recent months and not take AAA bookings to be working on something. Some people also thought that this could be getting into World Tag League coming up this fall in New Japan. We will see if that is the case. So yeah, they competed in in CMLL again in Arena Mexico. Of course, they were under the name Death Triangle, and Penta's name was Lucha Brother, and Phoenix's name was King. The reason for that was because their trademarks for their names in Mexico are owned by AAA. And allegedly, Conan was blocking the usage of these trademarks in Mexico. And now it seems that there are rumors that he is going to try to debut people in AAA with the gimmicks of Penta and Phoenix. Allegedly, this is the...
That's just Lucha. That's just Lucha. That's what. Yeah, that happens all the time.
Yeah. So the deep rumor side of this is that this might be trying to play hardball to try to get them over to WWE because Conan wants to have a relationship with WWE. I don't know if I necessarily subscribe to that, but it is an interesting theory to take to fruition on that side of things. But WWE does have interest in the Lucha Brothers with their contracts ending in the next 2 months. Of course, in the past, they have had a history of waiting until their contracts are expired before renegotiating a new deal. Doug, how are you feeling about where the Lucha Brothers are going to end up with their next contract?
I've always felt that the Lucha Brothers are absolutely in the camp of people that will just go wherever they get the best deal.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I don't think that there's someone who's going to be like, well, I think I'm going to get better pushed in this company or things like that. Because first of all, if they're talking about tag wrestling, I mean, tag team, haven't exactly been on fire in WWE. I don't necessarily think that that's necessarily going to be the move for them.
Mm-hmm.
Now maybe they want to push like Penta as a singles act. If WWE is thinking that he's actually, has that in him, and they're offering him that, maybe he's interested or intrigued in that, but I don't know. Personally, I just think they're going to go wherever the best deal is. I think they're going to stay together. And if I had to guess, I think WWE wants him, but I don't think they want him as bad as, Tony Khan's going to fight to keep him. I think they're obviously a very popular act in AEW. They've been there since the beginning, since day one. And I really don't see them leaving. I think they're going to get a really good offer from AEW to stay.
Yeah, my feeling is that Tony Khan is going to fight for them to keep them. I think that the way that they were presented in CMLL last weekend, not this past Friday, but the previous Friday, was very powerful. Like Penta was being cheered over Mystico. that is ridiculous. That on in itself is just crazy that happened. Um, Something that normally doesn't happen in Mexico for CMLL shows is people running to try to meet the wrestlers backstage at the stage door. It happened with Penta. So he has there's such a gigantic opportunity for them in CMLL right now. Now, of course, the money for CMLL isn't there as much as the money is there in AEW or WWE. So if we're looking at them being interested possibly in, doing more appearances of CMLL, what we're really looking at is Tony Khan going to put up the money to allow for that to happen? And I think the answer is yes. Um, but yeah, I think that you're right with them that um, I think that the only factor beyond money is that aura stuff about the CMLL work. Like if they care about how they're able to do CMLL shows right now, and if they care about the possibility of doing something like World Tag League, then I think that they might, take slightly less money if that's the case. If they care about those things, um, because I don't, they're not going to be able to do those things if they go to WWE.
Yeah, I think. But yeah, as I said, I think they're just gonna stick with the money.
Yeah. And then in the comments on YouTube, we have somebody saying that they want Penta and Phoenix to stay. Give Penta a Zero Miedo world title run. Yeah, Penta has never had a singles title in AEW yet.
I don't know that he's. Here's the thing. I get that. I've had this discussion with people who are like really huge Penta fans. He feels like a guy that I don't know that I would put the AEW world title on him. Maybe I'd put a singles title on him, but he's not. I feel like he's just a lot of his. He's a really good wrestler. Don't get me wrong, but he's also can be very shtick heavy, and I don't know that you necessarily want to put the world title on someone uh, who's going to end up falling into that. I mean, we kind of saw that happen with MJF's last title reign, to be completely honest, and maybe they'll do that with him, but I kind of hope they don't.
Some coming as somebody that doesn't mind shticks as much. I think that two belts that I would like to see Penta have as singles belts. I would love to see him as an international champion, which has kind of been booked as essentially the 1B belt in AEW recently.
Would it turn into the Mexican Championship then?
That would be fun. It would be fun if he made it the One Nation Championship, zero Nation Championship. I don't know. But I think that would be good. I think that he is of the caliber of when you look at the prestige of the international championship. He fits in with that legacy of that belt. His two tag partners, they both held that belt. The original champion Pac and Rey Fenix held it, so it would make sense. He fits in perfectly with that. But one of the ones that I would love to see is actually the CMLL World Heavyweight Championship, which of course CMLL doesn't care about their titles as much. Like, note that Mystico, I think, has been the world historic middleweight champion, I think it is, that he holds for like the past 800 days. So it doesn't matter as much for them. So having him carry around the CMLL World Heavyweight Championship, that would work pretty well.
Yeah, I think so.
So where do you want to see the Lucha Brothers on the tier list? Do you want them on the tier list? I guess the first question.
Yeah, I think they should absolutely be on the tier list. I mean, I think there's gonna be negotiations for
Yeah.
them. I think that I think they're smart enough to do that. I would still keep them on the lower end. I think I voted like D.
I'm feeling F just because I think that I I'm not at the level of like I think it's crazy entirely, but like I think that I think there's a chance. There's a chance. So the committee decided to put them in F tier for the moment. I think that if we see more info coming up, like I mean, of course, Andrade did do that CMLL run in and made people think, oh, maybe he's gonna stay with AEW, and that didn't happen. But I think that if the members of Death Triangle, known as the Lucha Brother and King, do more appearances in CMLL, I think that might be pointing to them staying with AEW. So I want to see how the rest of the month works. Um, yeah. So next up is the big boy that's remaining for us to talk about. The thing that you all probably clicked on today's episode to see. Shane McMahon. He was the subject of. We've been talking about him internally amongst the committee members for a little while now. We've been thinking about ever since there was, I think it was JR mentioned on the Grilling with JR podcast. He was like saying that Shane McMahon was interested in working with AEW, and people thought, well, okay, cool. He wants to work with AEW. That's never gonna happen. Why would that happen? You know, it's Shane McMahon, Mr. Coast to Coast, sure, but like Tony Khan would never. He wouldn't do that, right? Right, Doug?
Here's the thing. Okay, so obviously we saw this photo.
Yes.
That was taken in a airport lounge. It looked like it was someone walking by, took a quick photo, and then I don't even know who took the photo. Did ever get out?
It never was released who took the photos. There were 3 photos that were released. One of them in a meeting, a conference room. This was all at a private airstrip at DFW Airport. There is one of Shane outside the little like waiting area for this private airstrip, and one in a corridor, and then one in the actual meeting room where Tony Khan and Shane McMahon met this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, after the Death Before Dishonor show at Arlington.
Yeah. So here's the thing. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to put a whole lot into this because I think that there's nothing wrong. If Shane McMahon wants to talk, I think Tony Khan, loses nothing by saying, "Yeah, let's have a meeting and just chat." Especially if they, never really met before, and who knows what they want to talk about? Who knows? It just even if it's just hey, let's meet and kind of have just see how we vibe, how we gel. And that very well could have been what it is. You might say that that's a lot to do, just a lot of steps just to see if you gel. But hey, whatever. It's not like these people are short on cash. Like they can fly around and go have a quick meeting. It's not a big deal. So I'm not necessarily someone who's putting a whole lot of stock into this. I don't. I don't necessarily want to see Shane McMahon in AEW. But I don't know that that's what this is. I don't think he's like. Do I think Shane is wrestling at this point? No.
No.
Do I think he's? Could he play like a manager or something, or is he just going to provide something backstage? I don't know what he would even provide. I mean, he's barely been in in WWE recently, so it might just been a meeting where they talked and they said, oh, we'll go from here. We'll see what happens. But so I'm not putting a ton of stock into this personally at this point.
Yeah. So one of the two did release a statement. Hilariously, it was Shane McMahon who released a statement to bust it open to bully Ray. He got a statement in from Shane McMahon. This is the official statement of Mr. McMahon. Tony and I were connected through a mutual friend, and we had a great meeting. We talked about many things, but mostly about our shared love for the business and the rewards and challenges of working with family. I congratulated him on the 5-year anniversary of AEW and look forward to how he evolves the business moving forward. That is the official statement on the meeting.
The rewards of working with family.
But mostly about our shared love for the business and the rewards and challenges of working with family.
Okay. Rewards and challenges. Okay.
Yeah.
A lot of challenges, I would say, more so than rewards for him.
Well, I mean, he had the reward of getting into the industry, essentially.
I suppose, yes.
He would not have gotten into the Royal Rumble without it. He wouldn't have been the cruiserweight and European champion without it.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
I'll say this. a lot of times people groan every single time they bring in someone they hate. Like I think we saw that with Jeff Jarrett, and that turned out to be fine. I think that he's someone, and they do a pretty good. I feel like they do a pretty good job of using certain people correctly.
Yeah.
That a lot of people don't want to see around.
Yeah,
And I think that's probably okay.
I would go as bold as to say, for all of the legendary talent, which, like Shane or not, he is in that category, right? He's not a current performer. He's not in the peak of his career. He's in the twilight of a career. If he was a in-ring wrestler, right? I can't think of any of those types, and this is a great question for the audience. I can't think of any of the legend types that AEW has misused. Maybe Sabu for his little appearance there, but like that was like a one-off appearance. You know, it wasn't like RVD, for example, has been used perfectly in the appearances that he has done. Sting was used perfectly. Jeff Jarrett has been used perfectly. All the types. Ricky Steamboat was used pretty damn well. It didn't turn out well with the story with him and Punk because Punk just left. But he was being used pretty well in that angle, I thought. So if there's anybody in the comments that want to correct me for this, but the point is with this is that yeah, I think that somebody thinks that Ricky's appearances haven't always gone great, which I suppose is partially due to the punkening of it all. I did love his twist ending about Bryan Danielson being the dragon. But yeah, so my point is that I think that if Shane were to come in as an on-screen character of some sort, he would be used gingerly and appropriately and not in your face. You know? It's not like TNA where like they put a belt on Bully Ray. Like I don't see Shane McMahon getting the international title anytime soon. So this actually leads a little bit into some of the comments that I'm seeing throughout here. People asking about, you know, what our fantasy booking ideas for Shane are, or how he would be used. Jonesy from the committee mentions he could be seen as like on pre-show host panels, kind of like how Jeff Jarrett is for the pre-show host panels, as an industry expert kind of a thing. I think that one of the ideas that came up was him being an authority figure, possibly for Ring of Honor, even, because that could, not necessarily as somebody else was saying as a hostile takeover, but it would be interesting to see him as an authority figure in something like Ring of Honor, because I think that that's not as in your face of a figure. And then something that I brought up was like, hey, why not do a trios match with him versus RVD, and you do Battle of the Coast to Coast, but then they're not actually having to do a lot of work.
You know, it's funny because all three of those things, I don't like any of them because first of all, I don't like I don't like the worked pre-show panels. I think those are stupid. I don't like authority figures, and then I don't want him wrestling. So it's just like I'm you know, suddenly I've been convinced that I absolutely do not want this man in this company.
So would you would you want him as like maybe a consultant?
Yeah, something backstage, I guess. But here's the thing. I don't know what expertise he has. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I do, because I don't know what Shane brings to the table. Maybe he does bring something to the table, and I'm just missing. I
mean, at the least he has contacts in the industry, and he has seen how WWE is run over the years.
Yeah. Unless he's gonna come forward and say like, here's all the dirt I have on Vince. We can get him in jail, and then I know you would like that. that's
yeah. He could tease a Vince appearance. He could tease that.
Yeah. He's got that locked box still.
Yeah, Jonesy's saying if I could trust Shane to hit that as his one spot, the coast to coast, he would definitely want him in a match. And you know what? Just one match. Put it on Final Battle for Ring of Honor or something like that.
Put the ROH title on him. I don't care.
Put it on Dustin, really though. Put it on Dustin Rhodes. But yeah, I think that personally, I think that the best usages of him would either be in that kind of like, I if I were to fantasy book it, my best case scenario, if you actually used him on screen, would be as ROH authority figure, because I don't necessarily want him on uh main roster AEW TV. And I think that there is something that I think that it could be interesting. Honestly, I actually do think it could be interesting to see him on ROH. It's not my ideal scenario, and yeah, as was pointed out in the YouTube comments, he does have some production knowledge because he has worked in WWE for decades, so he does have knowledge.
Yeah, but I mean, like, is he bringing something that they don't already have?
Who knows? Yeah. I mean, there have been plenty of production hiccups with AEW over the years. Like, they still do not understand how to mix audio, which is baffling to me. But I don't know if that's something that Shane is going to be the front of house guy necessarily. But yeah, that's my pitch, is that Shane authority figure on ROH and only ROH, and I personally don't mind the idea of him as pre-show panel, because I like talking smack, and I think that AEW should do talking smack. That's my hot take. Do talking smack.
I don't mind that.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Like Renee and RJ have rotating guest panelists of Jeff Jarrett and Shane McMahon on Talking Smack. I think that works.
I'm surprised I honestly am surprised they don't have something like that after Dynamite. Like,
I totally agree.
As opposed to just reruns of Modern Family or whatever it is.
Well, like they could do they've slotted in Rampage in that slot sometimes, and what if they had just continued with it, where it's either going to be an hour extra of wrestling, or it's going to be talking Kaboom, the Kaboom Zone with Ryan and Renee. But special appearances by RJ City.
So where are you putting Shane on the tier list?
I don't want to put him on the tier list, but he should be on the tier list.
I think I put him at F tier.
I put him in F tier, and you know what? That's where we're putting him. We're putting him in F tier because we can't deny that he has to be on the tier list now, right? Like, he has to go on the tier list.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah, like it's that season of Community with the gas leak. We're here, buddy. We thought that this was going to be fantasy. We were like, there's no way this is happening. It is happening. Or at least it's happening enough that we have to put him on the tier list. So that's
fine. Let's see what happens. Who cares? Let's go with it.
Let's see how it plays out. And with that, let's just go through the tier list from the top to bottom. Read it off. We'll switch back and forth with each tier. S tier is Hikuleo, which he did not debut at SummerSlam as I thought he would. I put it at a 75% chance. He did not do it, so I was wrong. Instead, they got this little-known guy named Roman Reigns to return at SummerSlam.
Right. And in A tier, we have Ricochet and the Motor City Machine Guns.
No new news with either of them. B tier, the probable jumps. We have grizzled young veterans Ricky Starks, the Hardys, Alex Windsor, Leo Rush, Dijak, Zilla Fatu, Bobby Lashley, and newly appearing in B tier, the Von Erichs and the WWE TNA or NXT TNA relationship. I think that we might have some stuff to talk about next week with Ricky Starks and the Hardys, probably.
Yeah. We're probably also going to we might have to re-talk about that NXT WWE relationship or TNA relationship. It feels like it's getting pretty much solidified.
Yeah, and I think also as another person in that group there, Leo Rush feels like somebody that as the Arlington residency continues, we're gonna probably reconsider him and where his place is, just like the Von Erichs, because he has been appearing on the residency throughout as well.
Yeah. All right. C tier, we have Trevor Lee, the former Cameron Grimes, Speedball Mike Bailey, Mustafa Ali, Danhausen, Megan Bain, Jake Lee, and MVP.
Yeah, Danhausen, I'm so intrigued about what's going to happen with him because it seems like he's going to leave AEW. Anyway, D tier, we have the man now known as Raj Desi, formerly known as Jinder Mahal. That's not Sheamus, that's Tekla. Oh, I messed up the graphic there. um, Kevin Owens, Becky Lynch, Viva Van, Sheamus, Jordan Grace, Sheldon Benjamin, AEW's media rights, and Beth Phoenix. I will have to fix that graphic in post.
And then in F tier we have Sari, Utami Hayashishita, Hook, El Phantasmo, Kato Kiyomiya, Michael Oku, Jake Hager, Street Profits, El Hijo, Dr. Wagner Jr., Daniel Garcia, Dustin Rhodes, El Hijo de Vikingo, Joe Hendry, Katsuhiko Nakajima, Lucha Brothers, and Shane McMahon. Oku might be interesting too to talk about if he's going to have that match with MJF.
Yeah, I've been noticing recently on AEW programming that they have been highlighting RevPro. They've been using a lot of video that they're getting from RevPro. Like this past week, they used some of it about building up Kyle Fletcher's match with MJF, which now sounds like it's an eliminator match for the international title. Oku will be fighting MJF for the international title this month as well. I think it's getting a little bit more likely that a little bit more heat is happening with the Michael Oku fire. But we will see how that goes. It does also seem as for other F tier, Kiyomiya feels like it might not be happening. Anything.
No, yeah, I think it's time to do some late summer cleaning, I think.
Yeah, and I think that part of me thinks that we should wait until we do the promotion reevaluation before we get into the spring cleaning or the summer cleaning with it. Just because like it's possible that some of these people might be they might be in a promotion right now that we don't recognize, or might be having rumors of a promotion that we don't recognize that they could be jumping to. Like Sari is a really good example of that because she is the Marigold champion. And I think that she's perpetual F tier until Marigold gets put onto the tier list, and then I think that she has to go very high on the tier list.
Yeah, we'll have to see what happens with that. I kind of want to see how Marigold's attendance keeps going
down.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that goes in a month or two.
Yeah, I think that we're gonna have a WrestleWatch segment coming up on an episode here because it has been very interesting watching what's happened with Marigold over the past 3 months now that they've been open. Because it feels like Rossi was not prepared for Marigold to open when it did. And that's like why like Mozilla exists, is because he thought that he was gonna get Megan Bayne and did not get Megan Bayne.
And now we're back to lying about attendance again, so that'll be fun.
Yeah. So attendance watch, baby. Everybody loves talking about tarp seats. Yeah. So that is this week's episode of WrestleWatch. We called it "Here Comes the Money." So we hope that everybody had a good time tuning in with us. Hope that everybody watches again next week. If you have not subscribed to it yet, we do have a Twitter feed. We have the YouTube feed if you're not listening or watching on YouTube yet. And we also have a Substack where we go in depth about all of these things. So thank you all for watching.
And please give us a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and all those places too.
Yeah. So with that, I'm Ryan, and that is
Doug.
Yeah. So we hope that. Oh, and I'm gonna go to Raw tomorrow night. By the way.
Oh, have fun.
It's in Baltimore. It's in walking distance. I'm saying, why not? Right? Like, I want to experience. Absolutely. I want to experience it.
All right. So with that, then everybody, WrestleWatch.
WrestleWatch is my favorite. Oh yeah. So I would say that Metalingus would be a great karaoke song. That's my pick there.
Excellent. Bye everyone.
Bye.